even the defense sector.
Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. America has gone ahead with its 50% tariffs on Indian exports, putting pressure on India's export-driven industries. With India's total exports to US measuring at around $86.5 billion, goods about $60.2 billion worth will now face 50% tariffs, making affected sectors fall by almost 70%. The American market itself will also be impacted, with consumers bearing the brunt as tariffs on exports cause goods to become more expensive. In fact, analysts have estimated that the US consumers, who had till now absorbed 22% of the tariff costs through June, will be bearing the brunt of 67%. With over 40 countries being impacted by Trump's tariff tantrums, let's take a look at how the world is reacting to the same. Joining me on the telecast are my panelists. I start first with Raymond Vickery. Is the former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce. He's joining me from Washington, D.C. Mr. Vickery, thank you very much. And of course, my first question, how is the average American reacting to the tariffs that have been imposed on countries all across the globe, and particularly the 50% tariffs that come into effect today? Is the average American impacted, or does he not care?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's absolutely the case that cooperation between the two largest democracies in the world, India and the United States, is necessary for peace and prosperity throughout the world. That having been said, it is absolutely necessary that those in India and the rest of the world realize that Donald Trump is not the United States of America. He ran on a proposition of lowering inflation and creating greater prosperity here. The actions that he's taking in regard to tariffs, particularly on India and Brazil, where he has combined political objectives with his own mistaken views of the world economy, are leading the United States in exactly the wrong direction. Inflation has not come down. The employment figures last month were bad, and so President Trump tried to create a new reality by saying that those figures were wrong and firing the person who had brought him the news about the bad impact of these kinds of tariffs on employment. So this is a very difficult time in the United States. I must say that in regard to India, it is not foremost in the public consciousness here. We're dealing with National Guard armed troops on the streets of Washington, D.C. We're dealing with attacks on the media. We're dealing with attacks on some of the greatest universities in the world. The threats against the Federal Reserve and that effect on the stock market are all domestic concerns. Nevertheless, there is a growing perception that this view of my way or the highway, a transactional approach of real estate developer, is not in the interest of the average man and woman in the United States.
Right. You spoke about how Trump has been using these tariffs as political tools to fulfill his political objectives as well. His foreign policy at this point of time being diametrically opposite to what he was preaching and also practicing during his first term, but even during the campaigning period. I think the beginning of the term saw India and America in a very close relationship. In fact, we were on the verge of signing the bilateral trade agreement. So what has gone wrong, according to you, in the span of these 3 to 4 months that has pushed Donald Trump to do a complete turnaround, and the bully that he is, you already mentioned about it, to force it down on India, for him to make decisions on India's behalf with regards to whom we need to be talking to, whom we need to be extending our friendship and bilateral relations with, whom to be purchasing our goods and importing oil and gas from?
Well, you're absolutely right. You know, I've devoted the last 30 years of my professional life trying to bring reconciliation between the United States and India to move us from estrangement to actually being partners in fighting for peace and prosperity. What has changed is that unfortunately we now have a president uh, who views the world in terms of his own self aggrandizement, that he is the great man, that he decides and makes reality bend to his will. I think it was particularly galling to him when India spoke up after the surgical strikes against Pakistan centers of terrorism. When India said yes, it had acted on its own and didn't give full credit to Donald Trump and no, nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize as others had done. It's all about his own ego. Uh, you know, there have been neurologists here who have diagnosed him clinically as having a narcissistic mania. And I think that if you want to understand what the difference is, that's primarily it.
Yeah.
Also, he has started to listen even more closely to fringe people like Peter Navarro, his economic advisor, Stephen Miller, who have fed his sense of ego, and their views in terms of international relations are diametrically opposed to the kind of cooperation between the U.S. and India necessary to build peace and prosperity. I
Right.
have every hope
Right.
that we'll be able to correct this at the midterms.
Okay. All right. Uh, Stay on with me, Mr. Vickery. I'm also being joined by Keith Wise.